Hey, before we get to this interview that I was able to have with Jalen Moore from Utah Next Level Basketball, I wanted to just give a quick shout out to Tim Davis and the Great Western Classic. Was able to catch a couple games. I saw, Utah Ballers. AJ Jackson was there. I know Hector was out there with Prep Hoops. There was Frank Burlison. If you guys don't know Frank, he is a McDonald's All-American voter. He is a legend. He was out there catching some games. So some of the names that I heard, I know, I think Orem went undefeated. Is it Oahe from Idaho? That team is stacked. Those guys play an incredible brand of basketball. Bountiful, I think Bountiful went undefeated. Cypress looks like they're turning a corner with Coley and the gang out there. Coach Trey's got them playing the right way. I think they went undefeated up in the varsity division. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but it was a great time of basketball, a great warm up for a lot of teams that are going to be out playing at at Section 7. We got the Rocky Mountain Jam, I think, is coming up this weekend. It's such a unique thing being kind of new to the high school basketball scene for me, seeing these tournaments where, especially like with this one, you had some club teams that were out there playing, you had some high school teams that are out there playing. So I just wanted to go through Prep Hoops. If you're not subscribed, I don't get anything from this, but I just like to show love to people who are out here promoting our teams. So go check out Prep Hoops. Just real quickly before we get into the interview, I wanted to record a little bit about this, and so just kind of go through some of the players that Hector and the staff were writing about. So American Heritage got a lot of love. I got to see the tail end of one of their games. They're going to be a tough team to beat in 3A. So we got Weston Larson. Got a shout out here, coming off screens, knocking down shots. Jelani Ajegba, I'm going to go with that. I saw a couple of just nasty highlights from him. He's a class of 2026 player. He's getting up and is playing really, really hard. Beckham Bales over at Cypress is just a knockdown shooter. He's a class of 2026. Jackson Rasmussen, he's the number one player in the state of Idaho for very good reason. That kid is insanely good. Also, who is the guard, the lefty Logan, who plays for the Prospects? He's insane. He's so crafty. Owen Barney, for the Utah Mavericks. Hey, let's just give a quick moment to say congratulations to the Utah Mavericks. In their 14U team, they won the Made Hoops tournament. They beat Paul George Elite. That is a tremendous accomplishment for our boys from Utah. So Owen Barney is out at Davis. We had who are the other kids who were on the team? Anyway, it's escaping me. I should have been prepared for this. But Owen Barney had a great Rocky Mountain Classic. He's probably going to be playing up. He's going to be a stock riser in the class. Thanks, Hector, for shouting out AJ. AJ had a good tournament, my son. Some catch and shoot threes. Played some exceptional defense. He's certainly the weightlifting and the all this work he's been putting in is paying off. Mana Wintana, American Heritage, is going to be down at Section 7 in large part because Mana won MVP at a tournament, and that was part of the deal is that his team was able to earn and play their way into Section 7. Mana he's 2027. He's the number 2 ranked point guard in the class. I think he's going to end up being the number 1 ranked point guard in that class. He's really good. And then Colton transferred down from Morgan. He's going to be at Woods Cross. He is a absolute sniper, just a pure scorer. Him and Hunter Jackson at Woods Cross had a great tournament. They had some close losses, but they played really well. Between Colton and Hunter, and then Bryce and Watson, they're going to be a tough out. Bennett Atwood is a class of 2028 kid, plays for Utah Valley Prime. And the note here says, looks like he's going to Harriman. Let's see if we've got some other players that were called out here on Prep Hoops. I just want to make sure that we get people some love. Makai Allen at Provo. He is really developing extremely well as a lead guard. I think he can get up and he can really fly. Tyson Forsey from Dixie is I didn't get to watch Dixie play, but I'll just read kind of what Hector wrote here. He says this year it might be his team to lead as he's shown that he can go crazy from deep as he did this past weekend. Jonah Fulmer from Layton, and he plays for Team Utah. Hector says he's gotten a lot quicker. His slashing has come in handy as a player, and he's really showing that he can create a lot of spacing on the floor. Mason Tolley over at Cottonwood and the Salt Lake Legends. He is a class of 2025 point guard, 6'1", crafty around the rim. Damani Wilkerson over at Hillcrest, 6'3" combo guard, class of 2025. Who else we got here? Cale Flinders over at American Fork, 2025 point guard. Hector says at American Fork, it's a next man up. And right now, they're needing some players to step up and produce. And Flinders has the on-the-ball strength and ball handling, gets their teams into sets, and is going to be a kid who should be leading that team. And finally, over at Corner Canyon, it should be no surprise, but Brighton Valdez and Noah Benninger are that it's a team that's graduated a lot of seniors from the state championship or the state final team. And Brighton and Noah are going to be asked to carry a heavy load offensively and as leaders. And Brighton had a great Western Classic. So massive shout out again to Tim and the crew over at the Great Western Classic. It was fun to be able to get there. I wasn't able to get to as many games as I wanted to because my wife was out of town. So I was balancing kids and work and trying to get to as many things as I could make. But I know there was a bunch of women's team or girls teams that were playing. There was a lot of younger kids who were out there playing. And so it was great. It was just awesome to see team jerseys again and made me really excited for the season. But before we get to the season, we've got the finishing out here in June. So I'm sure we'll have some coverage. I'm going to be out actually at the Colorado Live Showcase with Judge next weekend. And then I know there's a pretty good amount of teams that are going to be down at Section 7. So hopefully be following along with that. And then we're right back into club ball. And so I've got a couple of club directors and coaches that I'm going to be highlighting as well. Starting right now, going over to my interview I did this morning with Jalen Moore. So we're going to get to that interview right after the intro music. This is the Utah High School Hoops Podcast, your source for sometimes informative, but always entertaining coverage of the Utah high school hoop scene. With your host, Adam Peak. What's going on, Jalen? How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. So I don't know that there are many Utah high school basketball podcasts. It's a very niche, it's a very niche thing, audience here. But I'm sure there are folks here in Utah who are familiar with you from your time playing at Utah State. But for like people like me who went to the Colorado State University, which is obviously the Harvard of the Rockies, is what I've heard. I don't know if you've heard that or not, but there's actually some fun connections between Utah State and Colorado State. Between the coaches, I'm not sure, which coach you played for, but I know like Stu Morrill was here and he was at CSU before that. So we can get into all that if you want to, but that's probably going to bore some people. But what's cool is your story and just some of the things that you've been through here in Utah. So let's hear a little bit about it. Where did you did you grow up here? How did you end up at Utah State, I guess would be my first question.
Yeah, so I actually I grew up in North Logan. I'm actually about five minutes away from Utah State University, and I've grown up in this house my whole life. So I've been going to their games ever since me and my brother were little kids. We were able to see guys like Ty Wesley, J.C. Carroll, Gary Wilkinson, like guys that were legends that played up there, and always got to see how awesome the crowd was in the student section, what the Spectrum's famous for. And then the cherry on top was just having a legendary coach like Stu Morrill that I wanted to play for. And I knew my dad had played at Utah State. So that was a lifelong goal of mine, is like, hey, I want to follow in my dad's footsteps and be able to play at Utah State as well. And I actually ended up going to Skyview High School right here in Smithfield. Um, won state in 2013, my senior year. After that, I went up to Utah State, and I actually, about halfway through my freshman year, I started starting. So I ended up being like a 4-year starter up there. Had a really good career. Played 2 years. So my freshman and sophomore year, I played for Coach Morrill,
Hmm.
and then junior senior year, I played for Coach Duryea, who's the top assistant at Boise State now. So those are the two coaches I played for. I know a lot of people have seen it now, a lot of the coaching changes that have gone through Utah State. But when I was there, Coach Morrill, Coach Duryea, they had been there for years, 20, 16 years. So I knew that I wanted to play for guys like that, legend like that. Obviously, by the time my sophomore year comes around, Coach Morrill was kind of towards the tail end of his career.
Right.
And he let me know my sophomore year that he was going to be done, but the portal and all that kind of stuff wasn't even as crazy as it is now, and I knew that I wanted to be at Utah State for 4 years, so regardless of who the new coach was going to be coming in, I knew I wanted to stay there for 4 years. So I ended up playing my junior, senior year, like I said, for Coach Duryea. Had a really, really good career, finished top in a lot of categories, top 10 all-time scorer. So I had a really good career there. Ended up having actually 13 NBA workouts. I worked out for 13 different teams, trying to find a spot. Ended up signing a two-way contract with the Milwaukee Bucks in 2017. Two-way contract where you bounce between the NBA team and the
Yep.
G League team. And they were brand new. That was the first year that like Wisconsin Herd was a brand new team for them. And I think every team has like a G League affiliate now, but back then, only
Very few
select
did.
few, about 20 teams did, and now every team has them. So, and that was the first year that they were actually doing the two-way contracts where you kind of bounce back and forth between the two teams. So I ended up playing with them summer league. Had a really good time, and throughout this whole thing, I ended up having some, kind of like mental health issues, like some anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff that I really wasn't aware of. And when I look back on it, I actually had that my whole time through Utah State. At the time, just didn't know what it was. If that makes sense, I was just kind of a
Yeah.
young kid, just thought it was normal, but also being kind of like a star of the team and stuff like that. I didn't really say much about it or do much about it. I just thought it was kind of what came with the territory. And I think by the time I got to the league and all that kind of stuff, it is a little too late that I had to actually step away from the game and get some help and all that kind of stuff. And when I did that, I ended up coming back home to Logan, where I currently am. And it took me a while to get over all that kind of stuff. But I knew, like, with that being said, I felt like there was a lot that I still could give to the game, and I didn't want to, if I wasn't going to be playing it, I wanted to find a way to help people and still be involved. And that's when I started training some kids. And that was about 7 years ago. I started training some kids and had a lot of parents come to me about 3 years in. Hey, you should coach some teams. And I'm like, God, I don't really want to get into coaching, like I like working on the skill work. I like helping the kids out with their skill work and helping them that way, building fundamentals. And the game has changed so much that skill work is so important, so I wanted to be able to help them, but continuously had more and more parents asking me to coach, and me and my dad and my brother started it. We are like, hey, you know what? If we're going to coach them, let's do it a way where we're kind of doing some AAU stuff. We're taking them, we're getting them some exposure. I think there's a lot of kids up in our valley that can play that kind of get overlooked,
Right.
whether it's girls or boys, and I think we got kids that can play, and I think the whole state has kids that can play, but when you leave the state, kind of most people only know about Salt Lake area when it comes to Utah, maybe St. George a little bit, stuff like that. So I wanted to help the kids up here get some exposure, show them what some other kids outside of the state will look like. So that's kind of what we came up with. We started Utah Next Level Basketball, started as AAU team 4 years ago.
Okay.
So this is just our 4th year. So we're still pretty new. We have a girls side, boys side. But first year on the Puma circuit, they came to us and asked us to, join the circuit with our boys and girls. So it's our first year, but feel like it's
Love
pretty
it.
good, pretty successful for only 4 years in. And, like I said, my biggest goal is I've done most of it. I played at every level, played at a high level. So my goal now is that if I have kids that come to me like, hey, I want to play in college at whatever level, or I want to be the best high school player, whatever their goal is, that's kind of what me and my coaching staff try to do now is like, hey, whatever their goals are, we try to help them be successful and achieve those goals and get them in touch with with coaches, promote them on social media, show that they can play, and just try to get them in touch and find a place where they can go play in college and achieve their dreams and their goals, and so that's kind of where we're at now. And so now I kind of do both. I do the skills training as well as the AAU travel ball stuff, and so it's been really good. So
that's cool. Yeah, I mean there is definitely a chip on the shoulder of northern Utah. I remember I did I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, I started this podcast because I had a mic and I'm just dumb like that. I run a whole like industry, like for my full-time job. I run a packaging podcast. I've been doing that for 6 years. And I just thought, like, well, Utah basketball in general I think is pretty overlooked.
yeah.
And so I remember at one point in time, I just put out like a top 5 high school teams. It was like a top 5 list that nobody asked for or something like that. Cause there's all these rankings that are out there. And I got so much crap cause like at the time, like Logan High School was just killing it. And I was like, fine. So, I had the coach on, and it was a whole thing. I'm like, man, y'all are coming in fierce with this. And I got to go to my very first game up at the Spectrum. I went to go see CSU, who at the time they had one loss. I think we were a top 20 team. And Utah State just gave it to them in the second half, and CSU took a loss. So it's a really, really amazing environment up there in Logan. So yeah, it's cool to see you guys out there on the circuit. One question I think before we get into kind of the team and some of the players is there's probably a whole story here. And I'm sure you've documented it around your journey and the high level athlete who's struggling with mental health, and that is a very real topic that I don't actually think, I think it's getting talked about more and more. Simone Biles, I think, really brought that to light amongst other people like yourself. But what was that? What was it like to, reach the, sort of the highest level of your sport, and then at the same time be at one of the lowest points? I mean, I've never played basketball at that sort of level, and so I got to imagine that's a place that's like a weird place to be at, right? You signed an NBA contract. A two-way contract is incredible, right? Like any contract in the NBA, I don't think people fully realize how insanely difficult it is to get to that point as a basketball player. So if you don't mind kind of like walking through, I know I've read about it online a little bit, but just walk through that a little bit for some of these players. Cause I do think this might be one of the most important things we talk about as you're saying it. Cause I think there are players out there who feel either scared or like it's a sign of weakness, that maybe they're feeling this way. And I think it's cool that you're out there. It's the first thing you talk about, right? So, maybe talk just a little bit more about that. And then, I do want to get into a little bit more about the program, but this seems like a really important thing that I don't want to skip over.
Yeah, no, it's good. And like I said, it's crazy because I say back then, it was really 2017, so not super long ago, but even just 7 years ago, like it was kind of a brand new thing. Like people just having anxiety or depression and stuff, like it just wasn't really talked about. And like you said, I'm glad that it's a little bit more talked about now. And I see like a lot of college programs or NBA teams, stuff like that, professional programs, organizations, they all get like, mental health coaches now and stuff like that to help their players, which is good. Because like even when I was going through that, like I said, 7 years ago, like the programs didn't have that, the organizations didn't have coaches that specialized in that kind of stuff. And I think all that kind of stuff is going to be beneficial for college athletes, professional athletes, because, at the end of the day, they got a lot of pressure. They got a lot of things going on, but they're still a human, like everybody else. They make mistakes. They got to make choices every day, just like regular people do, And so I will be in the star player and stuff like that at Utah State, kind of being put up on a pedestal, you're kind of on billboards. I'm on the side of like the town buses and being a star player, I just like when I'm feeling that kind of stuff, I just kept pushing it aside, swiping it away like, hey, this is whatever. It's not a big deal at the moment. And when I did that, it kept continuously just building on top of each other until it gets to a point where it's like, hey, this is something that I can't really deal with on my own. Like I'm actually gonna have to get some help. I had to go through to some therapy. I had to, be around my friends and family, like people that I knew really cared about me. And that's the important part about it, is having like a structure or some friends and family that really,
Mm.
are there for you. And at the end of the day, like it's bigger than the sport, and that's just what I had to comprehend and tell myself, like, this is crazy. I got to where, lifelong dream. My biggest thing, I don't want to let down my parents. That was my biggest thing, especially my dad, who had played in the NBA for 2 years, played overseas for 10 years, just a professional in and out, knew that was my goal as a kid. I was like, hey, I'm going to play in the NBA. I was like what I told my dad, I'm going to get there. I'm going to play there. Finally get there, and all this kind of stuff and reality hits and where it's like, whoa, I got to get some help,
Mm-hmm.
And but like I said at the beginning, I was kind of, I was timid, nervous, afraid, kind of to come out and say like, this is the reason why I'm not playing. I didn't want people to be like, oh, he's not good enough. He didn't make it. Like I'd made it when I played in the workouts, when I played in summer league, all that kind of stuff. I was successful, But at the end of the day, like it was the mental part that it just wasn't. Physical was there, The mental part is just the part that I was really struggling with. Had to get some help, and like I said, I was actually very nervous, afraid to show my face even around Logan, just
Mm.
being really famous, being from here, having people know me. I was like, gosh dang, I don't even want to go into Walmart or the local grocery store because people are going to be like, hey, I thought you were playing. What's up? And I didn't want to have to talk about all that at the time because, like I said, it just wasn't very common or talked about at the moment.
Right.
Um, but with me coming out and doing some stuff like that, I got a story written on me, and I was able to, talk about it and express it. And I've done a few talks here and there in our valley at some schools and been able to talk to some younger kids and some parents and all that kind of stuff. And that was the biggest thing for me is like, hey, I'm still being able to affect and change people's lives and being able to, help them out this way. And I love being able to help people with basketball and help them with their skill work that way. But, when it comes down to the real life mental aspect of it, and a lot of kids nowadays, I think dealing with some mental health stuff, anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. To have someone that they can reach out to and talk to that's gone through it at a high level, and been able to have to really step away from, like I said, good money, right? I mean, those
Yeah,
guys
yeah, yeah.
they make good money, you know what I mean? Like that was the other hard thing is like, hey, you got to step away from all that kind of stuff. But it's at the end of the day, like your mental health and all that kind of stuff is more important than all that, And
Yep.
I had to tell myself that, I have to tell other people that, and so that's kind of how it came about. Like I said, 2017, I was nervous about it, but now 2014, I mean 2024, I see a lot of people coming out, a lot of players, like you said, a lot of other athletes, a lot of other programs, stepping up in that spot, in the mental health issues, hiring coaches, getting psychologists, all this kind of stuff to come and talk to their players, and I think it's helped. I really
Yeah.
do, especially with a lot of these guys that are so young that go into the league. You got 18 and 19-year-olds that are going making millions, like that's a lot of pressure and a lot of stuff that gets thrown at you at once. I was 21 and it's a lot, you know what I mean? So I can imagine when an 18 and 19-year-old phenom that has all this pressure, what they go through, and I think back in the day, a lot of people would step away. Hey, I got to step away for personal reasons. And I think a lot of it came down to that, mental health issues, things that they had to go get help on. And now you don't see it as much, and I think that's because more people talk about it. It becomes more familiar. More people are familiar with it. They have people they can talk to, things they can get help with,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's just been a big part of like even growing sports in general. Every sport, I think it's helped at every level, from high school all the way up to professional. And like I said, I've loved being able to see it and love being able to talk about it and help people if they ever have issues. Like I tell our players too, like, hey, I'm your coach, I'm your trainer, all that kind of stuff, but I want to be a mentor. I want to be someone that can, be there for you and help you off the court as well as on it. So, if you ever have issues, anything like that, come to
Yep.
me. Let's talk about it. Let's make it work, and then let's, get to your dreams and help you succeed, So that's kind of where I come from is like I want to be able to help them on the court, but as well as off of it, and like we say, we preach it, mental health being really important, your grades being really important in school, and then being able to perform, So those are all the kind of things that we kind of touch on in our program. And I think the parents and the players, I think they really appreciate it. And like we said, that's all of our coaches preach that kind of stuff, you know. So that's why I kind of wanted to get coaches that have been. I got coaches that played in JUCO, they played in D1, they played professionally. You know, like I've got coaches that cover each base. You know, so if I got a kid that's got to go JUCO, I got a coach that can talk to them about it. If they go D1, I got a coach that can talk to them about it. All that kind of stuff. So we kind of try to keep it basketball related, but also teach them, you know, some life lessons and be able to be there for them as well as mentors.
Love it. I love it. And you know, it's such a unique experience, obviously, that you can bring. And you know, I remember I took my son went out to a camp at a NAIA school in Kansas, Southwestern College. It's a school that, you know, very few people in Utah have heard about.
Mm-hmm.
And they introduced their staff, like there's a coach on the staff that is a counselor, like a mental health counselor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, to your point, you know, smaller NAIA schools are seeing this, and it's going all the way up because, you know, if you take this, you've got this concoction of sorts of there's a book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which is a fantastic book talking about the mental health struggles of regular teenagers because
Mm-hmm.
of the social media era that they're raised in. You know, when I was in high school, which was the 90s, admit I'm old, but you know, when you know, if there was a bully, you could go to your home and you could be away from the bully. The bully
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do anything to you. Now you are bullied constantly. And it's a massive problem that's being well documented. So you have that combined with the the great utility that is social media for, you know, helping kids, like you had mentioned, achieve their
Yeah.
dreams, get
Mm-hmm.
noticed, all that kind of stuff. And then there's this added pressure that's on top of that now of like, well, I got to go get my offers, or I got to go do this, or I saw so and so did it, or they got 15 offers. And it's just like there's so much that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that what you're talking about um, is of equal importance to like skill. I think
Yeah.
we're going to see a lot of players who are mentally strong and maybe a little bit from a skill standpoint not as strong
Mm-hmm.
that are going to achieve more than the flip side of that because the pressure is so much. So it's awesome that you're, you know, you guys focus a lot on that up there at Next Level Basketball. And I would love to actually transition, if we can, into talking
Yeah.
a little bit more about the program.
For sure.
Because you guys do a great job of, you know, you're out there promoting kids, you're competing at a pretty high level. You know, I was able to shout out, you know, a few of the players, but you're a mix of kids from, or players from, is it mostly Utah, Idaho, and Colorado? Or are those kind of the three?
Yeah, and like Wyoming,
In
we get a
Wyoming, okay.
good amount of like boys and girls from Wyoming too that'll come to us as well.
It seems like if I'm this is an outside observation.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the boys program is up and coming,
Mm-hmm.
and your girls program is already, you know, one of the top programs. Do I
Mm-hmm.
have that read correctly, or are you like,
Yeah.
no, actually the boys are you know, are up there? Or it just seems like there's more girls who are, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being promoted, getting offers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean how did that all come about? Did you start the girls program first, or have you just found that, you know, maybe there was more talent early on with the girls program? Talk to me
Yeah,
about.
it's interesting. We started both of them at the same time, so both of them are going into their fourth year. Started both of them at the same time. And yeah, our girls program has just been on point, you know, like right from the very beginning. We kind of got all the best players from our valley and then some, besides the select few. And we just were able to build with them. And I think some of the younger girls coming up saw that we were pretty successful and were able to go out and compete with some of the better teams like in this state, but also go out and like win some tournaments in other states and compete at a high level against teams, you know, that were sponsored. And we were independent at the time. And we just have been successful, like you said, at promoting them and getting them looks and stuff. And I think that's kind of been attracted to a lot of girls that want to come play for us and stuff like that. And you know, two years in, I already had a D1 girl that ended up going to Wyoming. I think that helped, you know, like having a girl go
Right.
D1 already so quick. Last year I had another one that's going to Weber State. So like our girls side has been pretty successful at just moving girls on in like a high level. And the thing is, we've moved on a good amount of girls, and our boys, like you said, are starting to get up there too. And the thing that I've liked and that I've noticed is like our players will go to college and they go and produce. You know, like they go and are able to play. And like you said, a thing that we try to teach them is like, I want to help them with the skill set too, but I got to, you know, if you want to be a good player, you got to have a high basketball IQ. You got to understand the game. You got to
Right.
understand the correct reads. You got to understand all that kind of stuff. And that's what we try to teach them. Is like, I can teach you guys the skill work and stuff, but you got to know when to make this move or when to make that read and stuff. And those are all the kind of things we kind of try to break down the game like that, and teach them those things so that when they do get to college, it's not a shock to them. You know, they've done some of the drills, they've learned some of the terminology. You know, they know where to be defensively and all that kind of stuff, depending on what the type of defense that they'll play. And that's the thing too is you know, I played it in college, played at NBA. There's so much terminology basketball wise that I think a lot of high school kids don't know. You know, and like that's what we try to teach them is, and it's just hard because there's a lot of different types of coaches that will call certain things something different. You know, so we try to teach them all the terminology so that, you know, when they get there, we teach them about, hey, this is, you know, hard work, how hard college is, how in shape you got to be, how demanding it is to be able to go to the weight room and turn around and be exhausted and got to go to class, you know, and pay attention, and then you got to go to study hall, all this kind of stuff, you know. And we're able to preach it because we've lived it, you know, and I think that kind of makes a difference for them. And I think the girls' side just really bought into that really quick, like right
Mm.
away. And I think the boys' side, you know, took a little bit longer. And as they come along and as they're going along, I think the boys that have stayed in our program, you know, are getting to that point where it's like, hey, we're just locked in, listening to everything they say. And they just have been growing at a higher rate, you know. And like I thought the Puma thing would be awesome for the boys because I think I have some boys from up here that play at a really high level, but just haven't had the exposure, you know,
Yeah.
haven't been able to be noticed. So I was like, I got to jump on this Puma thing. Let's go showcase that we can play at a high level, play against these teams, whether we win or not. We just got to go compete and play with energy, play with effort, play smart, like you said, make the right play. And that's what we've been doing so far. And so I think the boys' side has got there, and the girls' side has kind of just like sustained that so far. And we just hope to keep growing in that direction, pretty much.
The cool thing about the Puma circuit that I've noticed, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but
Mm-hmm.
what I thought was cool is, you know, like in Wichita, they did like the JUCO Advocate event,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll happen again down in Phoenix. And what's awesome about that is because of the portal and because of the way that recruiting has evolved, they're doing the Pro 16, the NXT, and the JUCO Advocate events.
Mm-hmm.
So it's creating gravity for coaches from every division, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm a pretty outgoing extrovert, and so I just talk to people, and I was just, you know, it was really neat to like meet, you know, coaches from D2, from
Mm-hmm.
JUCOs, from D1 schools, and they're there, and the games that, you know, the next level teams are, all the Utah teams are playing, they're in the
Yeah.
same gym.
Yeah.
It's not
Exactly.
like some of these other circuits where it's, if you can, maybe you can get into the same gym, maybe, but by and large, you're going to be in a separate place and from, you know, away from where the, you know, quote, the real talent are.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I don't know, I just thought it was very well done. It's a new circuit, so obviously it's not perfect, but
Mm-hmm.
the type of gravity that they create for these coaches was really cool. And for somebody like yourself, who I'm sure, given your playing history and, you know, even your dad,
Mm-hmm.
is it Jimmy? Is that his name?
Yeah. It's Jimmy.
Jimmy. I
Yep.
think I met him and had a quick chat. I'm sure that, you know, you're able to go around and you know, you were probably recruited, and then,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you got to know, you know, coaches from other places, and hey, you got to come check this kid out. And it's so much easier than, hey, do you want to get in a car and go drive 40 minutes out to go watch this kid play? So it's probably I'm sure you know, probably agree, like it's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty good move for a lot of programs, like, you know, like next level basketball, to get out on the circuit.
Yeah, and it's been, you know, like you said, it's been good. The best part about it is like like you said, as just everything being in the same gym. Like I can turn around and see another Utah team playing. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
there's 12 courts. I can walk down there and I can see a 5-star recruit that they're promoting play in the same area. And I think, like you said, for recruiting purposes, it's awesome. A coach can come, for example, watch our game and walk one court away and go watch another kid and walk, and it's all just in the same place. I love that the 17Us use the shot clock and all that kind of stuff. Like they do a lot of things that make it realistic and can help the kids like show off their skills and all that kind of stuff. And then, like you said, the high level play, even the NXT teams, they got D1 players on them. They got high
Oh
level
yeah.
coaches. They got high level players. And that's what I like, me as a coach, as a competitor, like that's what I want. That's what I want to see. That's what I want our kids up here to go play against that they might
Right.
not ever see. But then I can turn around and tell them like, hey, these are the 17-year-olds that you're competing with, not just the kids in Cache Valley. Like you're competing with the kids from Texas and Florida and all over the place. And I think that's an eye opener for the kids. It's like, okay, that kid was better than me, like that's who I'm competing against. That's who I need to put in more work than. It's a good eye opener for them, because I have a lot of kids. Like I said, I got a lot of kids around me, really good in our valley, really good up here. But I'm like, hey, you got to be really good in the state, and then you got to be really good in the whole U.S. to get recruited. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yep.
I can give them the real examples and the real players. Like, hey, you want to be good? Walk 2 courts down and watch that 4 or 5-star recruit that they're talking about all the time. He's right here, and you guys can actually see what they do, how they play, the aggressiveness, the swagger, that kind of stuff. And that's what I love about it is it's all in the one spot. Like I said, the shot clock on the 17U has been awesome. The competition's been awesome. And I think our kids and players have, girls and boys have both just enjoyed it so far. I think it gives them just a real look at like what AAU basketball is like and helps them showcase that they can play at a high level as well.
No doubt, no doubt. Yeah, it's been really fun for me even to go out and watch and be able to cover a whole bunch of Utah teams, but also see just a bunch of other teams that you would never have any. There was a kid from Iowa that I was watching play, and I was like, "Dang, that kid he could go. He's on an NXT team."
Yeah.
And it was right next to one of the like showcase events. Like 4 or 5 coaches had wandered over, and he was balling, and I saw him having conversation. I'm like, what an awesome opportunity for this kid. And
Yeah.
I don't know that he would have ever had it before. So I'm sure
Exactly.
it'll happen. I'm sure it'll happen with some of our teams here in Utah. Well, Jalen, this has been super fun. I'd love for you to end it just with, hey, how do people, follow you guys and kind of track along with the progress of the program, social media handles, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So our Twitter is just at next level 435.
It's called X now. I don't know if you've caught that memo.
X, yeah. I still call it Twitter
I
because, like I
still
said,
call it Twitter
when
too.
I downloaded it was Twitter. I know all the youngins call it like I got X. I'm like I got Twitter. I don't know.
I got Twitter. I got Twitter, homie.
So, yeah, exactly. I'm like I call it Twitter. I know you guys rocking with Elon and stuff, but I don't know. So so at next level 435 on X or Twitter, whatever you like to call it, and our Instagram is next level basketball 435. So those will be like the 2 social medias that you can follow us on, and we're pretty active on both of them. Posting highlights of our players, posting offers, posting things, trainings, and all that kind of stuff that we have coming up. And then if they're ever interested in training or getting a part of our program, our email is nextlevelbasketball435@gmail.com. And that's, like I said, I try to get kids all over. That's from southern Idaho. We're very close to the Idaho border, which helps us, about 20 minutes away. And Preston's good. Preston's a good high school right there in Idaho. We get some kids from there. So we pull some kids from Idaho. We starting to get a little bit from, Brigham City, Salt Lake that'll come up and play for us. But, like we said, just trying to grow something. And, if your kids want to get better skill work mentally, all that kind of stuff, I'd love to work out anybody and take on all takers and help them achieve their goals and dreams. I think that's what I'm trying to do with this sport. And I think that's what I'm here to do. And so that's what I look forward to doing for a long time.
Awesome. Well, if you didn't get a chance to write those down, I'll make sure they're in the podcast show notes, so you can just click a button. So I'll try to make it easy for you, the listeners out there listening to the Utah High School Hoops podcast. Well, Jalen, I really appreciate you sharing kind of a little bit about your journey, a little bit about the program. Love following what you guys got going on. Love how you're about the players and doing the right thing. So thanks so much for coming on the show, and everyone go follow and support our local Utah teams. Appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate it. We'll definitely be staying in touch.
All right, for sure.